Parshas Ki-Tetze is a very interesting parsha. It begins by saying Ki-Tetze l'milchama, when you go to a war against your enemies, and Hashem makes it that you win, and you will capture people and capture things. And what will happen is Vayisa Shivya Eishes Yafes Torah, and you're going to find a captured woman who's very beautiful, and you're going to want to take her. You're going to want to rape her. That's what it really means. Right? You're going to want to take her. And take her as a wife. But it really doesn't mean that you're taking her as a wife at this point. It means he's taking her like a wife. Right? That's what he wants to do. So what do you do? The Torah says, okay, you want to take this woman? You can do it, but you have to bring her to your house. You have to shave her head. And you have to allow her nails to grow. And you have to change her clothing. It goes on in English. You take the clothing from her, and she should sit in your house, and she should pray for her mother and father for an entire month. I mean, she should cry for mother and father the entire month. And after that, then you can have relations with her, and you'll become like her husband, and she'll be your wife. So this is an extremely strange section for the Torah, because it seems to be the opposite of what the Torah stands for, to do such a thing. But first thing, let's try to evaluate, before we put an ethic into this and try to understand that, let's try to understand what the Torah is referring to. First thing is talking about a soldier in war, and a soldier in war who wins. Right? He won. So you can imagine what it's like. And most of us have not had this experience, thank God, but where you're fighting for your life, right? You never know if a bomb is going to blow up on you, if someone's going to sneak up on you and shoot you, you're going to get shot, you're going to get hurt some way or another, or just as difficult as you're going to have to do it to somebody else. And you can imagine what it's like to go through that experience, and your adrenaline is flowing, and you're really alert, and finally it's over, and you've won, you've been successful. And what happens is your animalistic feelings come through. You're like an animal. I mean, you're fighting like an animal. You're out there, even though you're using human weapons, you're still like an animal. You're out there in a very physical sense, right? And you're fighting against people, and there's blood, and there's death, and there's all kinds of things going on. And then you've got, and then what happens is after you win, this adrenaline doesn't just go away, and these desires just don't go away. They stay with you, and so therefore it's somewhat understandable that the man is going to want to use the same aggression that he's been used to at this moment to feel good, and therefore he'll take the woman. Now that's why I think that this is the basis of why you hear about rape, sadly, all the time, right? In all societies and in all ways, and it can be the most peaceful time. But it's definitely very common that we hear about how there's, like unbridled rapery going on after a war or during a war. And while it can't be condoned, we're not going to discuss the ethic yet. We're just trying to discuss the feeling why this would happen. I think we can understand that they become so aggressive, and they feel so powerful that they're going to want to go, and they want to feel better from what the pain they're in from doing this, but their aggression and their violence that's within them is still there. And even the most tame person is going to be violent because they're coming from a war, and therefore they take this woman and they want to rape her. So the Torah is very interesting what the Torah says. The Torah doesn't say no. It doesn't say you can't do that. The Torah says those is basically more difficult than saying no. But the Torah doesn't say no. It doesn't say you can't do it. The Torah says, okay, you want to rape her? So take her back to your house, right? Shave her head, let her fingernails grow, let her sit on the floor like a mourner and mourn for her parents, because you've now taken her against her will. And after you do that, then you can marry her, and you can have relations with her. So you're saying, that's not what he wanted. Right, but what the Torah does is the Torah takes them out of the scene, the environment, where his adrenaline is flowing, and it's very macho and it's very violent. It takes him out of there, and it says, if after all that, after I've made her look bad by shaving her head and making her like depressed for 30 days, right? She's sitting there. Imagine you kidnap a woman and you have her sitting in your house for 30 days. She's not going to be friendly and bubbly. She's going to not be in such a mood. So at the end of that, if you still want her, then you can do it. The Torah is basically saying, if you get past what she looks like, and you start to see that there's something about this woman, you want to marry her, then you can do it. So basically, first thing is that the Torah seems to say that it's an understandable, although wrong thing to do, for a man to have this aggression and want to take it out on the woman he captured. That seems to be something that's natural, even though it's wrong. But the Torah seems to feel that this is something that that a human being cannot conquer. That the Torah would say, don't do it. We learn from Rashi, who quotes the Gemara, that the people would do it. They would just rape her. But the Torah says, no, I'm not telling you can't have her, but you have to do all of these things to have her. And that changes the whole ball game. It's not, what do they want to do? They go in war, they find a woman, they rape her, and they leave her. Right? They don't take care of her. They don't bring her home to meet her. Imagine this guy catches this non-Jewish pagan, and he brings her home to meet his parents. Like, oh, look what I got. This wonderful new wife I'm going to have. The parents are going to say, you're crazy. Get rid of her. What are you doing? She doesn't even speak your language. She doesn't believe in anything you believe in. She's a pagan. Right? You murdered her brothers and sisters and everything, and now you're taking her? Like, you're crazy. She's going to destroy you. All right? So you see that the Torah is doing is it's saying if you fight this head on, if you go straight up against it and say no, you can't do this, the men are not going to listen. The men are going to do it. So the Torah says you can do it, but with these restrictions. And this is a very unique idea, because what the Torah is saying is that the Torah is doing this because of the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is so strong in this man that he can't control himself. And therefore, if you say no, then he's not going to listen. But by you manipulating the situation and saying, yes, you can do it, but under these circumstances, by the time he gets to be able to have relations with this woman, chances are he's not going to want to anymore. He's not all aggressive. He's not coming out of a war. He's not really, he's not having those feelings. He's not seeing this beautiful woman he's going to conquer, have relations with, and throw her out. She's like his wife, right? So that's not going to happen so often. So that's the first part. Now, there are a number of problems with this that make it even harder to understand. Because first thing is, we learned earlier that when you go to war, they have a special Kohen called the Kohen. He's been anointed for war. His job is that he comes out to the men, and we read this earlier, and he tells the men, okay, we're going on a war. Whoever just built a house, you don't have to go. Anyone who got married within the last year, you don't have to go. Anybody who has a new field and you haven't even gathered the fruit or vegetables from your new field, you don't have to go. And anybody who's afraid because they've sinned, and that because they've sinned they're afraid that God will punish them by making them lose the war, you don't have to go either. So who's left? Who can go? So I'll give you an illustration. There's a story told that there was this non-religious group in Europe, like after World War I, before World War II, and they used to do Jewish plays. Right? They weren't religious people. They primarily, some of them were anti-religious, but they used to make plays. Right? There's lots of Jews who aren't religious, and they would make plays. They like Shalom Aleichem plays and other types of plays. This was still in Europe before World War II, and they decided that they wanted to illustrate this Kohen, who goes and says to the people, okay, anybody who built a house, you don't have to go to war. Anybody just got married, right, and it's not a year after you got married, well, you don't have to go to war. So they go through this whole thing. So they make this play, and they have all of the Jews there ready to go to war. And the Kohen comes and he says, okay, if you just got married, you don't have to go. And if you just built a field, you don't have to go. And if you're afraid that you sinned and God will punish you, you don't have to go. So they made the play, and in the end, all you had left was the Chafetz Chaim. It was the only one left. Like, there was no army, because everybody had a reason not to fight. You had one guy left, the rabbi was the only one who was going to go to war. Right? So they thought they were being funny. So they went and told this to one of the rabbis. Like, they put on the play, and you see how they make fun of us. So he said back, that's not fun. That's true. Because only a righteous person is going to be able to go to war. For the Jews. The Jews understood it wasn't a military person necessarily with all the strength of the military and working out and building big muscles that's going to save us. What's going to save the Jewish people are the righteous people. So they said that's not a joke. They think they're making a joke, but it's not a joke. The truth is the Chofetz Chaim is going to save the Jewish people. Right, that was their point. The idea being that if the reason I'm telling you the story is if it says in the Torah that anybody who's afraid of sinning, right, you don't have to go. So that means that everybody who went to war are righteous people. So who is this guy who wants to rape the woman? A righteous person, the rabbi. That's what it is. The righteous person who is so righteous he doesn't even know of any sins that he has that God might punish him for, and therefore he goes to war. Now he goes to war and he finds this woman. He wants to rape her. Doesn't make sense. It's the one guy who you didn't think would do that. And the Torah is telling you that now the Torah is putting it in perspective. The Torah is telling you that a righteous person who goes to war becomes animalistic. Mm-hmm. That's what happens in war. You lose your humanity. Mm-hmm. You kill or be killed. You attack, you take things, you do what you have to do, or you're going to be destroyed. So even a righteous person becomes animalistic. Now, so what the Torah does is the Torah doesn't just say that this righteous person can take this woman with no regard for her. You have to, no, the Torah says you have to take her and you have to live with her, and you then if you want to have relations with her after all that, then you can. So what they're basically saying is, if you're really a righteous person. You're a righteous person, however, who is in the heat of battle. So you've lost control of yourself. So we're going to tell you, okay, you want to do this, go ahead. After you've gained control, after you've lost this emotion, and then you're not going to do it. That's what's going to happen.
If this woman will decide not to do so, if she will refuse him completely,
she doesn't have that ability. That's what it seems to say, because she's a captured person. I'm not saying that this is something that we comprehend today. When you have war, there's rules of war. You can't take a prisoner and use him as a slave. Right? We know that today. We can't do that. Well, the Torah's point is that they're setting this up that you are going to, that on the rare occasion that this could happen, it's probably not going to happen, because they're setting it up so that why does a righteous man want to rape a woman if he's righteous? Because he's lost control. But give him 30 days, he'll have his control back, and he's not going to want to do this. And if in 30 days she doesn't want to be with him, then I would venture to say that he's not going to want to do this. And that's really how the Torah is looking at it. The Torah is telling you this is the exception that creates the rule. This occasion, the Torah says, we're going to give in to the Yetzer Hara on the rare occasion that it actually happens, and then it said so that every other occasion you know that doesn't happen. Right? You don't have, the guy goes out and he wants to eat unkosher steak. This is okay, eat a little. They don't say that. It says you can't do it. In this case, the Torah seems to say that his urge is so strong they can't do that. So it's hard to understand exactly, but that's really what it seems to be. And an interesting point is that we later read on, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. But it says there is a man, like beginning a few lines later, there's a man, he has 2 wives. One of his wives is loved, and one of them is hated. Right? And then it says that each one of them have sons, and the older one is from the hated wife. Right? The firstborn son is from the hated wife, while the one who's more beloved, she has the second one, right? And it says you can't take away the rights from the son of the hated wife to give it to the son you love. In other words, the firstborn son gets a larger inheritance. The second son doesn't get a larger inheritance, but the second son comes from the wife you love. The first son comes from the wife you hate. Who is this wife you hate? So the commentaries tell us that the wife you hate is the woman you took in war. In other words, it never works. It's never going to work out. You can't go and take a woman against her will and expect that you're going to have a good marriage. She's going to be the hated wife. And the end result will be you'll have a Ben Soramora. You'll have a child, which it talks about after that, who rebels against you to the extent that he's like a murderer. Because the way you can't go do these things to people. Sometimes the Torah says we can't control you, but you can't. If you do this, if you go and you take this woman against her will, you're going to end up hating her, and she's going to hate you, and you're stuck with her. You can't get rid of her. You have to stay married as long as she wants to be married, and that's the end of it. So that's how they explain that. Now, so we go from the first case where it talks about him taking a woman, right, and and by the way, and it says, but it shall be that if you do not desire, then you should send her on her own. But you may not send her for money. You shall not enslave her, because you have afflicted her. Right? If you could take this woman, right, into your house, and at the end of 30 days you decide, what am I, crazy? I'm not going to marry this woman. I have nothing in common with her. Right? You can send her away. Right? But you can't sell her. Like, she's not a slave. You can't go and find another guy who wants her. That you can't do. Which is exactly what the world used to do. Right? If you look at the stories of the Romans, when they captured the Jews, and also the Persians or the Babylonians, when they captured the Jews, they sold them. They took them in as slaves and they sold them to be slaves. Right? So the Torah is telling you can't do that to this woman. If you want her, then you have to treat her like your wife. With all the rights of a wife, with all the privileges of a wife. You have to treat her like that. If you're not prepared to marry her, you can't treat her any less than any other person, and therefore you have to let her go free. You can't take her and sell her, you can't make her a slave, you can't use her in any other way. And then the topic ends, and it begins the next topic, which we're saying is actually related, of the man with 2 wives. And then it takes you into the next part, which we should read this next part, beginning of the last line on this page of 1046 and 47. So in the Hebrew it says, Ki Eliish, there will be a man, Ben Soramora, who has a child who goes against the way and he rebels. V'yanena shomea b'kol, and he does not listen to the voice, Aviv b'kol imo, the voice of his father or the voice of his mother. But Yisuru also, and they discipline him. They punish him when necessary. V'lo yishma he doesn't listen to them. V'tafshu bo abba v'imo v'yotziu also al zikna iro, and the mother and father take him and they bring him to the elders of the city, v'el shar mekomo, to the gate where the court is, v'yomer el zikna iro, and they say to the elders of the city, B'nenu zeh soramora, this child of ours, he's rebelling against us. He doesn't listen to our voice. He drinks until he's drunk and he eats until he passes out. Ragamuhu call anshe iro b'yavanim umes, and so they stone him with stones and he dies. B'yavarta ra mikrbecha, and you get rid of the evil from among you. V'kol Yisrael yishmu v'yiro, and the entire Jewish nation will hear about this and they'll be afraid. So let's understand what we're talking about. Here we talk about a parents, mother and father, have a child, and the child is totally rebellious. They see already at an early age that this child is a potential murderer. He eats meat until he passes out. He drinks liquor all the time. He doesn't listen to what anybody tells him. He's totally evil. And they know that if they allow him to come to adulthood, he's going to be like a mass murderer. It's like a sociopath in the extreme, right? So first thing we need to understand is that Talmud tells us that this has never happened and will never happen. It will never happen. You'll never have such a case. So with that understanding, when we read this, now we're going to have some questions, because for instance, this never happens. So why is it in the Torah? If you're never going to have a child like this, where they actually have, the child is so bad that the court says you have to kill him, right? The court will kill him. So why tell us? If it's not going to happen, why tell us about it? What's the use? Right? Then it says, you go, you take him out, and you kill him. Why do you kill him? So that all of the Jewish people should hear about it, and they should be afraid. Well, how can they hear about it and be afraid if it's never happens? Leave that line out of the Torah. You don't need that line. It's never going to happen. So how are they going to hear about it and be afraid if there's no ever such a thing? If it could happen, so okay, they'll hear about it. They'll say, you know what, we have to make sure our children aren't like that. And that's the end of it. They're afraid to have children who get like that. But it's never going to happen. So what is they afraid of? They know it's not going to happen. We know it's not going to happen. We're not afraid because it's not going to happen. So what is it talking about? So first thing is, we understand this on a few levels. One level is that this has nothing to do with the parents. Some children they are what they are, and that no matter what you do, it could be a mental illness, it can be whatever it is, but they're going to do what they want to do. And it could be that they're that bad. Now, we know that they're not that bad because it's never going to happen, but they could be pretty bad. All right, and there's nothing that you can do. That's one point, is that the Torah is telling you about this, and it has nothing to do with the parents. It's just that's how he is. The other way of understanding is that this does have something to do with the parents. And if you look closely at the wording, you'll find hints to that. Like it begins, it says, Ki ish, there'll be a man, ben soramor, who has a son who is totally rebellious. And how do you know? It says, Anenu shomea b'kol. He does not listen to the kol of his father or of the kol of the voice of his mother. So let's stop there. But the Torah is saying this very strangely. The child does not listen to the voice of his father and the voice of his mother. Shouldn't the Torah just say that he doesn't listen to his parents? Or if you want to say it even more explicitly, you could say he doesn't listen to the voice of his mother and father. Instead of saying the voice of his father and the voice of his mother, why all these extra words? The Torah never uses extra words. Right? Then later, it says they take him out to the court, and it's right. The mother and father take him out to the court, and they tell the court of the city. You say, Ze Soromor, this child who is totally rebellious, Enenu Shomea B'Kolenu, does not listen to our voices. But before it's separated, the mother and father, then they go to the court and they should say, he doesn't listen to my voice or my wife's voice. He doesn't listen to my wife's voice, my husband's voice, or my voice. It says he doesn't listen to our voice. The first case, it separates them, the voice of the father and the voice of the mother, and at the end, it puts them together. It says the voices of my parents. So why is it doing that? So the Talmud seems to tell us that if you want to look at this as somewhat of an education on how to raise children, the number one important thing that it's telling you that you need to know is you have to be consistent and you have to be united. That is, the mother and father have to say the same thing, and the mother and father have to pretty much are in agreement of what to do. So you can't have the mother say yes and the father say no. You can't have the mother say, I'm going to punish you and you're going to spend a week in your room, and the father say, no, I'm going to punish you and put you a day in your room. They have to say the same thing. And therefore, you see that this child is a rebellious child. He doesn't listen to the voice of his father and the voice of his mother. The reason the Torah uses the extra words, voice of father and voice of mother, when it could have said the voice of your father and mother, is because they're not saying the same thing. They're saying different things. The father is saying, you can't do this and this and this, and the mother is saying, you can, or vice versa. They're not teaching them the same way. We all have this, right? We all have this. When you're raising children, the way you know that you have it is because our children catch on very quickly, and they know not only which parent to go to for what, but they know that if they go to one and they can say the other one said okay. Now, if you always had a united voice, you would know if the other one said okay. But we all know that we slip in that area. And we also know you certainly want to have a united voice. You want to make it that the mother and the father have discussed the issue that the child is doing and have decided together what they want to do. That's the appropriate act for raising children. And the mother and father have the same ethics, the same beliefs, and together they work out how to raise the children rather than each one doing their own thing. This, where it says the child is a rebellious child, it's telling you one of the reason is because the mother and father did not have the same opinions, and they expressed different opinions, and the child used it for his own benefit and became rebellious. In fact, the law says that not only should there be an agreement in what they say, but when it says that their voice, it means to say that the mother and father's voice, literally their voice, should be similar. They should, in other words, if the father, when he speaks, is always very emotional, and the mother is very soft, so it's going to have a different effect. But, sometimes, I know people, we go into a meeting and one person has a comment about a certain issue, but they're very emotional about it, and everybody else feels, can I argue with him? Listen how strongly he feels about this. When in reality, he does that all the time. Every issue is that strong. It's not he's not so strong about this one. Every issue is that strong. So therefore, but we don't want to. If somebody's really that committed, there must be a reason, right? While you here, so in this case, you have a father doing that, and you have a mother who's very soft-spoken. So you're not the same. They're not similar. The Torah is saying that one of the things you need to do is you have to be similar in how you raise a child. You have to have discussed it so that it's the same with the two of you. And if you don't, you could have a child with a problem. Now, right? So therefore, even though this will never happen, the Torah is telling you this to teach you a lesson, right, of how to have children that will be positive. And one of them is that you will speak with one voice. Right? So then it says that they take him out and they stone the child. Now, this child really hasn't done anything wrong yet. Right? He's a child, right? All that he's done really is he eats to excess, he drinks and gets drunk, right? And he's rebelling against his parents, right? Everybody knows kids rebel, right? We all know that. Some kids rebel more than others, but even those who rebel a little bit are still rebelling. So what is the big deal here? The Torah tells us all about this rebellious child. So the point being is that the Torah, by the fact that the Torah tells us this is not going to happen, this extreme case will never happen, it's telling us a method so that in a less extreme case it won't happen either. And it gives us the various reasons to know that. And that's what it's saying here. And then when it says that all of the Jewish people will hear about it and they'll be afraid, right? It'll frighten them, right? How can that be if it's never going to happen? Right? So the point is that that's not what's frightening them, that the kid is going to be killed. What frightens them is the effect of seeing the effect of what happens when you are not united. Now, what happens is, like, when I get married, I'm in my 20s and when I have my first child. All my friends are also in their 20s and they're going to have their first child. So none of us really have that much experience on raising children, right? So what happens is that I just do what I think is best. But the Torah is telling you that this is what you need to do. One of the things you need to do is you make sure that the husband and wife speak to each other, take each other's opinion into account, and have a united front with the child. That's what they're telling you, that we have. And therefore, it's telling us a rule that if you want to keep a child to grow in a positive way, you have to make sure that you're in agreement, the two of you. You can't have the father doing what he wants and the mother doing what she wants. They both have to do the same thing together. And therefore, it says that all the Jewish people will hear and they'll be afraid. As they'll hear what happens if you don't do this. What happens is your child rebels. Not necessarily to the point where he's murdered, where he's killed, but he'll rebel. Because he's going to see that my parents aren't consistent, that they're not making sense. They tell him, my mother says I can't go to the mall, my father says I can go to the mall. So what do? Right? So I know I'll go to my father, and every time he'll tell me I can go. Right? But that's not the right way of doing it. Right? And that's what it's telling you. We have another interesting thing comes up immediately after this, beginning in verse 22. And that is Bikiya Beish Chet Bishpat Mavis. You have a guy who's taken to court, and the court decides he has to be killed. And they hang him from a tree. Below Sili Nevlaso ala Eitz Ki Kavor Tikabrenu Biyomahu Ki Klalta Elohim Tolyu Lo Titames Ad Masecha Asher Hashem Lekech Rasin Lechal Nachala. And it says, don't leave him hanging on this tree. You should bury him that day. Right, as it says here, for a person who's hanging is a curse of God, and you shall not contaminate your land, which Hashem gives you as an inheritance. Why does it tell you this? Here's what happens. A guy's guilty. A guy did something wrong. He's guilty, and this punishment is hanging. So they hang him. Right? So traditionally, I don't mean Jewish tradition, but the world's tradition is that when they hung someone, they left them hanging. Because the more people who saw this person hanging knew, I can't do this. In other words, why is that person hanging? They'll put a sign, let's say, on him. He's hanging because he stole. They killed him because he stole. So now, if you're thinking of stealing, you see that dead body hanging from a tree with a sign on it, you're not going to steal so fast. So they leave them there for people to see, right? The Torah says you can't do that. The Torah says you have that to even contemplate such an idea means you totally don't understand what punishment is in the Jewish world. First thing we need to understand, that we learn this in the Mishnah, that it's extremely rare that anyone was ever killed by a Jewish court. Jewish courts have capital punishment. They allowed the court to kill. Right? The court had the power to kill someone who they felt was necessary to be killed. That was a fact. But it's also a fact that it happens so rarely that it's almost like it never happened. Right? You see that Rabbi Akiva talks about how if they would kill one person in 70 years, there would be a bloody court. Right? In other words, it says nobody gets killed. They never saw anyone get killed. So you have to first realize that in Jewish tradition, for the court to actually kill someone is extremely difficult. It's very rare. It's extremely rare, because the amount of effort that has to go into making sure that you got the right person is enormous. I mean, for instance, here in Canada, you have people who get convicted, they go to jail, and then 25 years later we find out they didn't do it, and we let them out. Now, we took 25 years of their life. That's a serious thing. Right? We have to pay for that because we made a mistake and destroyed that person's life. On the other hand, imagine if the person was convicted and we killed him, and then we find out 25 years later he didn't do it. Well, there's nothing you can do. He's dead. Right? It's too late. Judaism says we cannot. One of the ideas is that we will not kill somebody that there's even the slimmest chance that they're innocent, because there's no fixing it. If you put somebody in jail for 25 years, you've ruined their life, but they're still alive. You can do something for them. But somebody you've killed, it's finished. There's no bringing him back because you made a mistake. So the Torah is extremely strict, and it's extremely rare that they ever did it. Now the next thing is that it's been thousands of years since they've ever even thought of doing it. The Jewish court, number one, doesn't have authority to kill anymore itself. It needs to have the Beis Hamikdash, the temple, built in order for it to have the power of killing. It has to be the Sanhedrin, not just any court. It has to be a special court. And next thing is today, we live under Canadian law here. We can't kill anybody. We can have a base, we can have a court. If you owe me money and you say you don't, I can take you to court and we can fight it out. But if I say you killed somebody, the court can't do anything about it because we have to live under Canadian law. We can't go killing people with Jewish law, right? So this is in history it's extremely rare. In practicality, it never happens that Jews will kill someone. So here you have a case where they actually kill someone and they hang him from a tree. So this guy is 100% guilty. For that to happen, it had to be obvious that he was guilty. So therefore, now why do they take him down? And they don't want him left up there. While it's a good way of showing people, you better not do this, because look what happened to the last guy. Why does the Torah say you can't do that? And that's because every human being is created in the image of God. They're godly. When you hang somebody from a tree, right, and their soul left them, it's an embarrassment to God. It's like God is hanging from a tree, because that we're made to resemble God. Now we don't know what that exactly means, but it's an embarrassment to God for that to happen. So the Torah says there's a thing called human dignity. This man did something that made it that it's better for him to be dead than alive, but he still has the idea of human dignity. We still have an obligation for human dignity with such a person. You can't embarrass them. You can't treat them badly. Yes, you have to kill them because they did something wrong, but you don't have to embarrass them, and you don't have to humiliate them, and you don't have to do all these other things. Right? You have to kill them because it's the best for them, but not the other things. And one of the things that you see is that in the civil courts, that humiliation and the oppression that's put on the criminals, put on the prisoners, is enormous. And we don't do any of that, because there's one major difference. In the civil world, if you do a crime and you don't get caught, you got away with it, right? You go and you rob a bank, nobody catches you, you got away with it. In Jewish law, if you go and you rob a bank and the police don't catch you, you still are caught, because God caught you. The moment you did it, God caught you. God knows that you did it, right? And therefore, our whole idea of the justice system is different. In Canada, the justice system is that if we don't have this, people will do things wrong all the time and think they got away with it, and the whole society will fall apart. People will kill each other and steal from each other, so you need to make laws. In Jewish religion, you don't get away with it. You're always caught. So the purpose of our laws are to benefit the criminal so that he has an atonement for what he's done. Well, he did something wrong. He's going to atone for it by being killed, and then his soul will go back to God. While in Canadian law, the purpose of why we arrest somebody and we convict them and we kill them is not only because they did something wrong and they have to pay for it and there's a punishment, but it's also for other people that they shouldn't do something wrong. And in Judaism, we don't have that concept. We don't have it at all. So that's the major difference in the two occasions, the two cases. The one case with the civil court and one case with our court, and that's why it says here you shouldn't leave him hanging overnight, because it's an embarrassment to God. Because that person did something wrong, right? They did something wrong. They have atoned for it now that you killed them. So there's no reason for you to embarrass them or humiliate them. Bury them, because that's what God wants from us, and that's what it says. Any questions about these things so far? They're all pretty odd. I mean, they're very startling, everything we've said so far. The next one, beginning chapter 22. You shall not see the ox of your brother or his sheep or goat cast off, and hide yourself from them. You shall surely return them to your brother. If your brother is not near you and you do not know him, then gather it inside your house. It shall remain with you until your brother inquires after it. You shall return it. So shall you do for his donkey. So shall you do for his garment. So shall you do any lost article. Right? These are the laws of Hashavas Aveda, the lost objects. That is to say, that if somebody loses something, you have a mitzvah to return it. You have an actual mitzvah. Like you have a mitzvah to keep Shabbos, you have a mitzvah to return a lost object. You have a mitzvah not to cause cruelty to animals, you have a mitzvah to return a lost object. It doesn't matter if it's a donkey, it doesn't matter if it's a piece of clothing or a basketball. You have a mitzvah to do it. What if you don't know whose it is? You have a mitzvah to hold on to it until you'll find out. That's what the Torah is telling us here. That's the mitzvah. Right? And this mitzvah is often used as one of the discussions about outreach. The obligation that we have as individuals to reach out to people, to try to bring them closer to Judaism. Because we say that if God gave us a mitzvah, that we have to go and return a lost object. A guy loses his pen, you have to try to return it. A guy loses his cow, you have to try to return it. You're obligated by Torah to do this. Then what about when a person loses his child? Of course you'd say you have to return the child. You found a child, you have to return it to his parents. How about when God loses his child? That's us. Because the child doesn't realize that who he is, doesn't realize what it means to be Jewish. That we have an obligation to help bring that child back to his father. So that obligation is not just taken literally, that if you find an umbrella, you have to return it to its owner. But it also means that if you come across a Jew who's lost from Judaism, you have an obligation to return him. That in the best way you can. But that's one of the things that it's saying. There's another section that I'm going to skip ahead for, but here if we look on 1055 and 54, it talks about Lo Yavo Emoni Moavi B'Kal Hashem. You're not allowed to allow the Ammonites or the Moabites to become Jewish. Right? They're not allowed to become Jewish. That is to say, that if you have a person who's born from the people of Moab, we're the people of Israel, or the Hebrews, there you have a tribe of people, a nation of people who are called Moabites. They're from Moab, right? From Moab. And those people and their brother Ammonites, there were Moab and Ammon were two brothers, and they made their own nations. They're not allowed to convert to Judaism. Even if it's 10 generations, they've separated themselves from them, and they've lived among us, you still can't let them convert to Judaism. Now, the first problem with this, right, which is an aside, but it's good to know, has to do with Ruth. You know, the book of Ruth, the story of Ruth. Ruth is the mother of King David. Right? Ultimately, she's, a few generations back, but the Mashiach is going to come from Ruth. Ruth was a Moabite. And it says you're not allowed to let a Moabite convert, and they let her convert. Right? She converted. And not only did she convert, but she became the mother of the future king of Israel, of King David, and the mother of the future Mashiach. So Mashiach's coming from Ruth, who was a Moabite. So we learn right away in the book of Ruth, when you read it, that it doesn't mean women. It means men. You're not allowed to let a Moabite man convert, but a woman can. Because the Torah tells you, the next line, why is it you can't let them? It says, because of the fact that they did not greet you with bread and water on the road when you were leaving Egypt, and because he hired against you Bilam, the son of Beor, to curse you. And Hashem your God refused to listen to Bilam, and Hashem your God reversed the curse to a blessing, because Hashem loves you. You shall not seek their peace or welfare all your days forever. So it wasn't the women who came out, it was the men. Right? God said, why do we not allow them to convert? Because when we were wandering in the desert, they're our relatives. See, Ammon and Moab remember the story of Lot, when the city gets destroyed and his daughters have relations with him? You know that story? So Lot, as far as Lot is told that the city of Sodom is going to be destroyed, he waits to the last minute. He leaves with him and his wife and his daughters, and they leave from Sodom, and as they're leaving, the city is being destroyed by God with fire, Lot's wife looks back. She desires to go back, it means. And she dies on the spot. She becomes the pillar of salt. So now you have Lot and his two daughters go into a cave, right? Lot gets drunk and passes out. And the two daughters realize we're the only two human beings left in the world. There's us three. That's it. Us two women and our father. We're the only people left. God destroyed the whole world. They didn't imagine that God just destroyed one city because they're in the desert. They think God destroyed all human beings. And we're alive, so we have to be Adam and Eve. We've got to repopulate the world. So our father's drunk. Let's have relations with him. And we'll get pregnant. And then we'll have children. And there'll be more children. The whole world will come from us. Little did they know that, of course, the world was not destroyed. And that they didn't need to do that. And they went and they had relations with their father. And the oldest daughter had a child named Moab, meaning from my father. That's what Moab means. This child is incest from my father. And the second daughter, the younger daughter, said she had a child and she called him Ammon, which is from my people. But she was a little bit more modest. The oldest daughter said, "You don't like it. Too bad. My father and I had relations. Too bad for you. You don't like it? You think something wrong with it? Too bad for you." That's what she says. She didn't care. The second daughter is a little bit more humble. Maybe I was wrong. I shouldn't have relations with my father. I thought that it was the right thing to do, but I was wrong. I'm embarrassed now. And so she says her child's name is from my people. She doesn't say anything about her father. She just hints at it. But these two children are the children of Lot. Lot is a nephew of Abraham. So that means that the children of Lot and Abraham are like first cousins. I mean, they're relatives. They're close. So the fact that when the Jews left Egypt, the Moabites and Ammonites didn't try to help them and give them food. And not only that, they went and hired Bilam to curse them, even though God didn't listen to them. So God says, you're not allowed to let these people become Jews. They're too corrupt. You can't allow them. Their DNA is corrupt. You can't allow them to convert. But it means the men, because it was the men who actually did it. That's how Rus is able to convert. So on that basis, right, we have these nations. So the Torah tells us that why don't we do it? So one reason is because they hired Bilam, and then it says God didn't listen to Bilam because he loves the Jews. So what is the Torah telling us? The Torah says, you know why you can't have Moab and Ammon become Jews? Because they hired Bilam to get you. It's just like, you're friends with that woman. Do you know that woman tried to kill your father and you're friends with her? Right? That's what here. Moabites tried to destroy the Jewish people by hiring Bilam. Ammon and Moab tried to destroy the Jewish people by hiring Bilam to curse us. God didn't listen and he didn't curse us. He gave us blessings instead. So, but why does the Torah tell us that God didn't listen to them and he gave us blessings? What's the purpose of telling us? We know the story. We have a whole parsha about the story. Why does it say it here? The fact was, why do we don't let them become Jewish? Because they went and they didn't give us bread and water and they hired Bilam. That's why. So don't say they hired Bilam even though God didn't listen to him. So the reason the Torah says that is that we believe in that when the Mashiach's about to come, and the Mashiach comes, then the nations of the world are all going to come and give reasons why they should be accepted now to be among the Jews. Because now that they see that Judaism's right. So the Moabites and Ammonites are going to come and say, you know what? What are you giving us a hard time for? The Mashiach's here. We're with you. Right? Which we know they're not. But we're with you. Why are you with me? Well, we hired Bilam. You hired Bilam to curse me. Why is that a good thing? Oh, but you see, he gave you a blessing. He gave you a blessing. You have to thank me. You have to appreciate it. Because we hired Bilam, he gave you a blessing. So here it says, God says, no. You hired Bilam because you wanted to kill the Jews. You wanted the Jews to die. Right? You failed because I didn't listen to him. God didn't listen to him. I blessed the Jews. I did the opposite of what you wanted. So you can't go and say that you're going to get credit for that. You're not getting any credit. You tried to kill the Jews. Right? That's why he includes it here, so that when they say, well, we helped the Jews. They got blessed by Bilam because of us. So yeah, but you had no intent. The point being is that the Torah is telling us a very interesting thing. It says that we know in general when someone does something for you, you should appreciate it. You should have hakaras hatov. I spoke about it in the shul last week. You should let people know. Somebody goes and they put the book out for me, I should say thank you for putting the book out. Thank you. burning the book out. When somebody gives you a ride, they do something for you, you say thank you. Even when someone does something that they're supposed to do, the mailman delivers the mail. He's paid to deliver the mail. It comes from your taxes, right? You pay for stamps. It's not like he's doing you a favor. He's doing his job. Nevertheless, he's doing something for you, so you should say thank you. So if somebody does something for you and they want to be nice to you, certainly you should say thank you. This also tells you if someone does something for you and they have no interest in you, but they're not against you, you should also say thank you. But if somebody's out to hurt you, and even though the end result was it helped you, but they wanted to hurt you, then you don't say thank you. And that's what happened here. In this case, they hired Bilam to curse us. They wanted us to have trouble. And because they wanted us to have trouble, right, then God says, you don't say thank you. You don't let them be a part of the Jewish people. If they had just said, we want to bring in Bilam, he's going to curse the Jewish people, not because he wanted to hurt them, but for some other reason. So then we can say, okay, the fact that he blessed us in the end, because God wanted them to, we have to appreciate what you did for us. But they didn't want that. They wanted to hurt us. So we have occasions in our own life when you have interactions with people. So the mailman comes, he delivers your mail, the guy brings your newspaper in the morning, and you see him, you can say thank you. And he'll say, what are you saying thank you for? I get paid to do this. Doesn't matter. I appreciate you do it. You do a good job. I appreciate it. Right? That's fine. Even though he doesn't care about you. He only cares about his money. That's why he's doing it. He's not delivering paper because he wants to be nice to you. He doesn't even know you. He's just delivering the paper. Doesn't matter. Because he's doing it for your good or he's doing it for himself. But it's nothing wrong with that. You have to appreciate it. But when somebody comes and they want to hurt you, they want to insult you or insult one of your family members, and in the end they don't accomplish it and something good comes of it, you don't have to show appreciation. Then in that case you don't appreciate it because they wanted to hurt you and God saved you, that they couldn't hurt you. And so in those cases, when somebody's actually malicious and they want to hurt you, there you don't have to show appreciation. And then we learn it from this. That's where it comes from. Because we don't let the Moabites marry into the Jewish people. Oh, but we hired Bilam and he blessed you. Why don't you let us be Jews? Because you didn't want it. It's not that you hired Bilam to bless us. You wanted to kill us. And you hired Bilam to curse us so that you could kill us. And it didn't work. And therefore we don't appreciate what you did at all. That's the difference in the case. And that's how it works. Okay. And here you have an interesting law as well. Just people ask this a lot. There's a law in here beginning on 1057 verse 18, and it says, "Lo tia kadeshim bebenos Yisrael." You should not have prostitutes among the Jews, the women. In other words, you should not have a Jewish woman who's promiscuous, right, or a prostitute, that kind of thing. And you should also not have a man who's like that. Right? The idea being is that this idea, where it says, well, you hear from people, it's one thing I can go and marry a woman, right? And we're married. But where does it say I can't have relations with a woman I'm not married to? How do you know you can't have a man can't have relations with a woman he's not married to, or a woman can't have relations with a man? But where does the Torah say you can't do that? We're raised with this idea, right? We're raised here in the West, in Canada, we're raised with the idea it's not appropriate to have relations before you're married. But why not? How do you know you can't have relations before you're married? So we know, the world around us, the Christian world that we live with, they believe that, right? So maybe they're wrong. So this is the answer right here, where the Torah says you should not have among you should not create women who are like prostitutes or men who are like prostitutes. In other words, they're promiscuous, they sleep around. The idea being is that it's wrong to do this, and this is the quote in the Torah that tells you this. It's one thing is that when you're married you can have relations, but before you're married, how do you know you shouldn't have relations? Is from this line. That's where it comes from. So when people tell you there's nothing wrong with it, they're wrong. The Torah says it's wrong. Women are not prostitutes. Women are not right. A woman is a human being, and she has intellectual abilities and emotional abilities, and she's the equal of a man in her own way. Just because a man is stronger and he can subdue a woman and make her into a prostitute, right, or cause her to have relations when she really doesn't want to, right, because he can physically do it, it's wrong. The Torah tells you it's wrong. You have to treat the genders, men to women and women to men, not like sex objects. You have to treat them like intellectuals, emotional people, fulfilled spiritual people, equals, right? Men and women are different, period. But they're not better or worse. They're different. And this is an indication that the Torah does not allow us to do such a thing in such a way. And then the next one here on verse 20 talks about interest. You shall not cause your brother to take interest of money or interest of food, interest of anything that he may take as interest. You may cause a Gentile to take interest, but you may not cause your brother to take interest. So here, let's think about this one, and we'll have to conclude with this one, even though there's many more. The Torah says you're not allowed to charge interest. And you're not allowed to, I can't cause you charge you interest. You want to borrow money from me, you want to start a new business, and you need $10,000, and I got $10,000. It's my money. You want me to lend it to you. Okay, I'll lend it to you, but you got to give me something. Give me $1,000 extra. Give me $500. I'm lending you the money. You can't open your business without my money. You're going to open your business, you're going to live the rest of your life off this business, and I lent you the money. So I want $500. I want my money back at the end and $500. You can't do that. But it says you can do it to a non-Jew. So how can that be? If it's evil, right, where do you see that you can do evil to non-Jews? The Torah does not treat non-Jews badly. It doesn't say a non-Jew should be, you can steal from, you can rob from, you can take advantage. It doesn't say that. So why can you charge them interest? So the idea is that we're looking at it backwards. You know, if I have, let's say you want to do business and you fly into Toronto. In order for you to do business, you need a car. Right? You got to get from the airport to the business where you're doing let's say you're having a deal with somebody. You got to go meet that person. So you need a car. I've got 2 cars. I only need one. I'll rent you a car. Right? So I'm going to rent you this car so you can do business. That's perfectly allowed. You're going to pay me $20 a day and give me my car back at the end. Right? That's allowed. But if I'm in the money business and you need money in order so that you can do business, that I can't charge you interest for. This doesn't sound logical. If I'm in the money business, why can't I charge interest on the money when if I'm in the car business or the cell phone business and you want to use a cell phone that I have, I can charge you. That I'm allowed to do, but money I can't charge you for. And if I can't do it, right, for money, why am I allowed to do it to non-Jews? Because if it's bad, then it's bad. And if it's not bad, then it's not bad. So which is it? So the fact is that lending money is not bad. There's nothing wrong with charging interest in money in and of itself. It's not evil to charge interest in money, any more evil than it is to charge interest, so to speak, on a house. If you have a house and somebody wants to rent your house, you're charging them interest. That's basically what you're doing. They're living in your house and you're taking money for that because it's your house. In the end, you're going to get the house back. You're going to get the house back, plus you have their money. So that's just like I'm lending you money. I'm going to get the money back, plus you're going to pay me extra. Right? It's the exact same thing. So the Torah tells you the following. If you notice here, it uses the word brother. And the Jews are brothers. Right? All Jews are brothers and sisters. That's what we are. If your brother comes to you under normal circumstances, and I don't mean, you might not agree, because maybe your brother borrows money from you all the time and he doesn't pay you back. But let's say you have a brother comes to you and he needs money. He needs $10,000 to open a business, and you've got it. You have $10,000 and you don't need it to live on. You have it in savings. So would you take your own brother or your own son and say, okay, I'll give you the $10,000, but you got to pay me $1,000 extra in interest? Of course not. It's your family. You lend him the money, right? But you're not going to charge him interest. You give him the money at no interest because he's your family, right? Because he's your family. That's what the answer is. It's not evil to lend money with interest. Nothing wrong with it at all. But you wouldn't do it to your son. You wouldn't do it to your brother. You wouldn't do it to your sister. So all Jews are brothers and sisters. We don't do that. But since there's nothing wrong with lending money, you can lend money at interest with a non-Jew. It's a business. There's nothing wrong with that. You can't charge them usury. You can't charge them an enormous amount of money. You can't beat them up. You can't do terrible things. But if you want to be a bank and you want to lend $1,000 to somebody and charge them 3% interest, that's perfectly legitimate. Right? That you're allowed to do. But you wouldn't do that to your brother. Your brother wants to borrow $1,000. You don't charge him interest. So that's what the Torah says. All Jews are brothers, so we don't charge interest to each other. So then why do we do business with each other? It should be the same rule. If I have 2 cars and you need one and you're Jewish, would I charge my brother rental on a car if I have 2 cars? Of course not. So why am I allowed to do that? So the Torah gives us the understanding that if somebody needs to borrow a car, that usually means they're doing fine, but they want to do better. They want to go on a vacation, or they want to rent a car for business, but they're not in trouble. Usually when somebody wants to borrow money, they're in trouble. That's why you borrow money. Right? The idea is either your business will fail, or this new business you want to start is not going to work, or you don't have enough money to pay your bills, you don't have money for food, whatever it is, you need to borrow money. That means you're in trouble. And if a Jew will charge his brother interest, then the brother will never get out of debt. Right? Like if you're in debt, $50,000, and I lend you $50,000, and at the end of a year you got to pay me back the $50,000 and an extra $2,000. Right? 4% interest. You're going to have to pay me $52,000. You're going to be in a year, you'll be $52,000 in debt. Right now you're only $50,000 in debt. It's getting worse. It's not getting better. I didn't help you any. In the end of 10 years, you're going to be in more debt than ever. You'll never get out of debt. So the Torah says, if somebody wants to lend you money, and he's your brother, you want to lend money to your brother, you can't charge him interest because you want to get him out of debt. Right? We've all had it happen to us where we're living in debt, where our bills are more than our income. And it's horribly, horribly hard. Right? It's like a pressure sitting on you all the time. What bill do I pay? How do I pay it? And what do I do? Is this more important or is that more important? And you get upset all the time and a lot of anxiety. It's a horrible thing, not have enough money to live. The Torah says, don't put your brother through that. Lend him the money he needs, and then he'll pay you back when he's successful. But to charge him interest, he's going to never get out of debt. Make it so he can get out of debt. But a non-Jew is not your brother. You're allowed to make money off them. But you're not allowed to be bad. You're not allowed to be usurious. You're not allowed to be criminal. But you're allowed to make money off them. It doesn't say you have to. If you choose not to charge interest to a non-Jew, you don't have to charge him interest. If you have a non-Jew you're close to, you don't have to charge him interest, but you're allowed to charge him interest. And that's the difference. So the Torah originally we think of, the Torah says that you can't charge interest. It means interest is evil. Interest is not evil. Right? Making money is not evil. But making money on your brother is. That's bad. Right? Your brother should be somebody you take care of. And since all Jews are brothers, we take care of all Jews. And the fact that non-Jews we can charge interest to, you can treat them like your brother if you want, not charge them interest, but you don't have to. Right? And that's what it's telling us.